It began as a whisper, faint, uncertain, and almost too bold to believe. Inside the hushed corridors of Buckingham Palisades spoke of a royal decree so unprecedented it could alter the monarchy's path forever. The name spreading through those marble halls wasn't William or Kate, nor even the king himself. It was Lady Louise Windsor, the quiet, bookish young woman few outside royal circles truly knew, yet who now stood poised to reshape centuries of royal tradition. It started after a late-night meeting between King Charles and his youngest brother, Prince Edward. Officially, it was described as a private family discussion, but it stretched long past midnight. Staff later whispered of raised voices, papers shuffling, and a heavy silence that felt planned rather than accidental. By dawn, Edward had left the palace without a word, his expression carrying both disbelief and destiny. And from that moment, the rumor began to move like smoke through the palace walls, invisible. Yet impossible to contain whispers claimed that the king was preparing to revive a title steeped in history, the Edinburgh line once belonging to their late father, Prince Philip. But what truly shocked the court wasn't the revival itself. It was the name at the center of it, not Edward, not Anne, but his daughter, Lady Louise. The one royal the public had barely noticed was suddenly the focus of a royal revolution. Outside the palace, the media began sensing something was amiss. Lady Louise's scheduled appearances were quietly cancelled. Her name disappeared from official diaries. Even her home at Windsor saw new security patrols. Something was shifting, a deliberate, calculated effort, either to protect her or to prepare her deep within. The archive's senior courtiers discovered a classified file labeled Project Edinburgh, guarded under encryption and restricted access. Its existence alone was enough to spark chaos. Some said it contained a plan to redefine royal succession. Others believed it was a manifesto, a vision for a new royal order built not on bloodline, but on merit and purpose. The whispers reached Queen Camilla soon enough. Her circle, ever alert to palace intrigue, began searching for answers. Those close to her described her demeanor as calm, yet cold. She had faced scandals before affairs, feuds, and public scrutiny, but this was different. This wasn't about reputation, it was about power. And in the monarchy, power is the most fragile inheritance of all. Teamed through the growing tension, one truth began to emerge. King Charles was no longer content to simply reign. He was ready to rewrite the rules of monarchy itself. Whether driven by duty guilt or the shadow of his late father's legacy, his actions carried a quiet defiance, a need to make the crown mean something again. As rumors grew into headlines, the monarchy braced itself for what hadn't been seen in decades, an internal rebellion disguised as reform. For years, Lady Louise had been the invisible, royal, humble, graceful, unnoticed. Raised away from the spotlight, she learned empathy before authority, humility before hierarchy. Her mother, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, had always shielded her from the burdens of royal life, believing that a grounded upbringing was worth more than fame. That quiet upbringing would become her greatest strength. Where others sought attention, Louise learned observation. Where others spoke, she listened. Those who met her often described her as thoughtful, poised, and wise beyond her years, a reflection some said of her late grandfather, Prince Philip. Among his private papers, King Charles once found a handwritten note from Philip, not addressed to anyone specific, but filled with purpose. In it, Philip wrote of the Edinburgh legacy not as a title of privilege, but as a duty of principle. There must always be an Edinburgh, he wrote, to remind the crown what it stands for. Those words struck Charles deeply. For years, he had struggled under his father's towering shadow, the distance, the expectations, the unspoken love. But in Louise, he saw something familiar, something pure, the quiet strength that had once defined Philip himself. She represented what the monarchy had lost: dignity without entitlement, service without spectacle. Gradually, admiration became conviction. Charles began inviting Louise for private lunches, seeking her opinions on charitable projects and her thoughts on how the monarchy might connect with younger generations. She wasn't merely a niece to him, she became a symbol of what the future could be, a bridge between tradition and transformation. But such admiration came at a cost. Elevating Louise would mean challenging centuries of hierarchy and risking backlash from within the family itself. Still, Charles pressed forward. Late-night meetings followed secret gatherings with advisors, clergy, and senior aides. What they discussed was nothing short of revolutionary: the idea of granting the historic title Princess of Edinburgh, not to Edward, but to his daughter. The proposal was met with shock and silence. The Archbishop questioned how such a move could be justified without unraveling royal convention. Camilla warned her husband that the press would twist the story, painting it as favoritism or emotional impulsiveness. They'll use her against you, she cautioned. But Charles had already decided his vision wasn't about politics. It was about redemption. When Edward finally learned of the decision, he was torn. pride for his daughter warred with fear of the storm ahead, yet deep down he sensed this was what Philip had intended, that the Edinburgh name was never meant to be inherited but earned. And so, in the quiet of his study, King Charles signed the Edinburgh Restoration Act with a single stroke of his pen. He revived a legacy that had slept for generations. The announcement stunned the world. The title, once belonging to a titan of duty, now rested on the shoulders of a young woman the world had barely seen. Within hours, the media exploded. Some hailed it as the rebirth of a forgotten crown. Others called it the King's Gamble. Inside palace walls, reactions were far more complicated. Anne was skeptical. William was cautious. Even Edward was unsure, but Charles saw something they could not: a spark of renewal in the face of decline. Because beneath the ceremony and symbolism, the decree was more than an act of royal favor. It was a confession, a father's son trying to heal the monarchy's fractured soul. And though the ink had dried, the echoes of that decision had only begun for every admirer who called him a visionary. There were others who saw betrayal. Yet no matter how history judges him, one truth remains in choosing Lady Louise king. Charles didn't just crown a princess. He redefined what it means to be royal. And in doing so, he set the stage for a reckoning that would test the crown like never before. The Queen Consort's fury was instant and chilling. Those who served her that morning swore they heard the sharp crash of porcelain before a single word escaped her lips. For Camilla, the decree was more than just a royal reshuffle. It was a threat, a symbol that her influence, once absolute, was slipping away. And as she plotted in silence, another woman watched with a calmness that concealed something far more strategic: the future Queen Catherine. Behind closed doors, Buckingham Palace became a battlefield, not of armies, but of wills. When Camilla finally confronted Charles, it was with the force of a storm long contained. Her voice trembled with fury as she demanded to know why he had made such a monumental decision without her counsel, why he would risk everything they had built, their hard-won image, the fragile balance of power they had crafted for a girl barely known to the public. "You've made her a symbol," she accused, "and symbols have power that can turn against you." Charles, usually reserved, met her rage with rare defiance. He spoke of renewal of duty of his father's legacy, but beneath his words, she sensed guilt, a guilt she knew how to exploit. For Camilla had always understood that the king's greatest weakness wasn't the press nor the public. It was his heart. Their marriage, once an alliance built on understanding, now revealed its cracks. She felt herself being pushed from the center of the crown's orbit, her influence diluted by new forces rising around the king. Sophie, steadfast and trusted, and now Louise, whose quiet grace had captured the public's sympathy. For the first time, Camilla felt the ground shift beneath her. Her fear wasn't just of losing favor, it was of losing relevance. Meanwhile, Catherine observed in silence. She had long learned that in the monarchy, true power didn't lie in speaking. It lay in waiting. Her silence wasn't passivity, it was precision. As Camilla's temper flared, Catherine watched the sparks scatter, knowing that every outburst only strengthened her quiet ascendancy. Aides noted her composure during engagements, her calm reassurances to a worried William, and her refusal to be drawn into gossip. She was the antithesis of chaos, and that made her the most dangerous presence in the room. Outside, the media fanned the flames. Headlines split the royal narrative in two. Team Tradition, led by Camilla and Princess Anne, defenders of the old order, versus Team Reform, led by Charles Sophie and the newly appointed Lady Louise, the reluctant princess. Public opinion fractured. For every supporter who hailed the decision as visionary, another condemned it as reckless. The crown, once a symbol of unity, now embodied division, desperate to regain control. Camilla turned to her allies. Through discreet channels, whispers began to circulate, subtle claims about the king's emotional instability, about unseen influences guiding his hand. But each attempt to reclaim dominance only deepened her decline. The image she had spent decades rebuilding began to unravel, not through scandal, but through perception. Catherine, on the other hand, played the long game. She issued no statements, offered no opinions. Yet her silence spoke louder than any speech. The public began to see her as the calm in the storm, the steady hand the monarchy desperately needed. Behind her serenity, she understood exactly what was happening. Power was shifting again, not toward Charles or Camilla, but toward the quiet future she represented. The monarchy was now at war with itself, not in shouts, but in whispers. And while Camilla's anger echoed through Clarence House far to the north, another moment was unfolding, one that would change everything. It wasn't. Westminster Abbey. There were no cameras, no fanfare. Lady Louise's coronation took place in the ancient halls of Holyrood beneath candlelight and silence, a ceremony unseen by the world but destined to live in legend. Witnesses spoke of a trembling, hand a teardrop on velvet, and a crown once worn by a man who defied empires. As the crown touched her head, history seemed to exhale in awe and in fear. The decision to hold the coronation in Scotland shocked even the most seasoned royal watchers. Holyrood House, the seat of Scottish royalty for centuries, had not seen such a moment in living memory. For Charles, it was symbolic, a deliberate act of revival, connecting the monarchy not to empire or politics, but to its purest origins, but within the palace. The message was clear: this wasn't a coronation for spectacle. It was for legacy. The ceremony was sacred, almost haunting. No cameras, no politicians, only family clergy and a handful of witnesses sworn to secrecy. It was said Charles insisted on the forgotten oaths once spoken by Scottish kings. In that stillness, Lady Louise stepped forward, no longer a royal child, but the living embodiment of her grandfather's dream. Sophie watched from the shadows, her heart divided. For years, she had protected her daughter from the cruel glare of the world. Now she could no longer shield her. As the crown was lifted, her tears betrayed both pride and fear. Pride in the woman her daughter had become, and fear of the weight that crown would demand. When the hall fell silent, Louise whispered words no one had scripted. "I will honor his legacy." Those closest swore they heard it, a promise not to Charles, but to her grandfather, Prince Philip, whose spirit lingered in every corner of that ancient hall. It was more than acceptance. It was surrender to destiny. When news of the secret ceremony finally broke, the reaction was electric. Grainy images leaked online, stirring fascination and controversy. The title Princess of Edinburgh trended worldwide. Some called it bold, others betrayal. To the public, it wasn't just a coronation. It was a mystery. But beneath the admiration, unease began to spread, because in the House of Windsor, every new symbol casts a shadow. As the world celebrated old rivalries, reignited behind palace gates, tensions flared. Prince William blindsided his fathers. Decisions saw danger in his cousins. Sudden rise, Harry, watching from afar, saw poetic justice. For the first time in decades, the family wasn't divided by outsiders, but by ambition. William's frustration wasn't about titles, but about power. He had spent years preparing to inherit a stable, predictable monarchy. Yet now, Charles had replaced tradition with symbolism and sentiment with risk. His relationship with his father grew colder, every message filtered through advisors. And Harry's silence was broken only by a smirk and 5 cutting words. Karma has a funny memory. The remark spread like wildfire, deepening the fracture between brothers. Meanwhile, Sophie found herself at the heart of a storm she never sought. Her love for Charles was genuine, but her fear for Louise was stronger. She knew the crown could elevate, but also consume. In private, she begged the king to protect her daughter from the machinery of monarchy. But Charles, weary yet resolute, believed this was the only way forward. For Louise, the honor soon became a burden. The eyes of a nation were upon her, admiring, judging, waiting. Her cousin's polite smiles masked unease. Her father's pride was shadowed by worry, and the vision her grandfather had dreamed became a weight she could scarcely bear. She began to wonder whether she was the symbol of unity her family needed, or the spark of division that might destroy them. Then fate intervened. At Balmoral, amid the silence of the Scottish hills, a discovery changed everything. A sealed letter from Prince Philip himself, hidden among his journals, addressed simply for Charles and Louise, to be opened when the time is right. That evening, as the family gathered in the Great Hall, Charles unfolded the paper. Philip's words weren't sentimental, they were prophetic. He wrote of his fears for the monarchy of ambition, disguised as purpose, and of the danger that comes when love and power intertwine. "Blood honors duty, not ambition," he wrote. The words struck like thunder. In that moment, the bitterness dividing them began to soften. Even William's guarded expression shifted, his eyes lowering in understanding. Louise realized then that her coronation had never been about power. It was about preservation. Her crown was both a symbol and a sentence, a promise to carry forward the humility her grandfather had embodied. That night, unity returned, fragile but real. Charles felt for the first time that his father's spirit was judging him. It was guiding him. And as the wind howled over Balmoral, he knew what must come next. In the weeks that followed, Louise emerged before the nation. Her voice, soft yet unwavering, carried words that transcended bloodlines and titles. "We do not inherit service. We choose it every day through grace." That single line reignited something Britain had long forgotten belief. For the first time in years, the monarchy stood for purpose, not spectacle. In Buckingham Palace, a new portrait was unveiled, Lady Louise beside Queen Elizabeth II. To the public, it was powerful, almost prophetic. One represented perfected duty, the other duty reborn. From that moment, the monarchy's story changed. Polls rose, criticism quieted. The crown for once was seen not as a relic of power, but as a reflection of humility. Historians would later call it the Edinburgh Doctrine, King Charles' final legacy, that tradition must serve the people, and power must be guided by empathy and, at its heart stood the young woman who made the world believe again, Lady Louise, Princess of Edinburgh, a girl who never sought the crown, yet became its most meaningful symbol. Because in the end, the story of the monarchy did not close with a coronation, but with the question, can grace save what power once broke?